have our jurors all?
I think we do.
Okay, good. We ready? Yeah. Bring them in, Tina. Thanks.
Hey guys, you ready?
Thanks, Terry.
Ready for the jury, Your Honor?
Yep.
Jurors in the courtroom. Jurors may be seated. President County, Your Honor.
Thank you, Deputy. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for returning. Were you all able to abide by my instructions during the recess? All right, good. We'll get started again. Dr. Knox, you're still under oath. Go ahead, Mr. Escobar.
Dr. Knox, I think we left out where we were talking about some of the things that you do as a crime scene investigator involving cases, specifically also in self-defense cases. What about the distance between the shooter and the deceased? Is that an important factor? And if it is, why is that an important factor?
Well, it's definitely an important factor because obviously the proximity of two people together goes to things like what they would perceive in terms of level of threat, what kind of interaction they could have, whether or not a person is within range of being struck or things like that. So that would be an important thing to document.
And so what do you do in that circumstance to memorialize that distance?
Well, the location itself you would look at so that you could document, for example, here you have seating which affects distance. And then, of course, you also could have things like if there's any physical evidence that would point to where people were located, documenting that and measuring those distances, and looking at any other evidence, whether it be video, whether it be autopsy results, anything like that might also help you to know what kind of distances there might be between people.
What about the relative physical size of the two individuals? How do you memorialize that?
By taking actual measurements. So in the case of a person that's deceased, they get measured at the time of autopsy. In the case of anybody that's living, you can go measure them. So it's not uncommon in a shooting case, for example, to take the person that fired the shot and then get some measurements of their body in order to have those measurements to know things like how far out could they have extended their arm and what kind of reach, how high they would be sitting, those kinds of things.
Getting back just briefly to the issue of interviews, and in reference to the location of witnesses and the accused and the deceased, how intent are you in trying to make that determination as far as distance is concerned? How important is it to try to be as exact as possible?
I object to the relevance of how important it is to this witness.
In crime scene investigations altogether.
All right, with that clarification, sustained, and we need that clarification. Thank you.
So that's one of the things that you are really focused on when you're doing crime scene investigations and reconstruction with respect to a shooting, is because obviously the distance between two people is very significant as far as what they could do to one another, as far as what the person would see and perceive, those sorts of things.
Your Honor, we would tender him now before we start getting into what work he actually did in this case as an expert witness in the field of crime scene investigations and reconstruction.
I would object to the format of the question.
Approach. As to the crime scene reconstruction
An investigation.
and investigation.
Matt, thumb drive real quick. May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
Dr. Knox, I'm going to show you what's been marked as defense exhibit number VV and ask you if you recognize that exhibit.
I do.
And what is that an exhibit of?
This is a PowerPoint presentation that I've prepared in this case.
And does it include photos that you took and photos that you also analyzed in this particular case?
Yes.
And do they fairly and accurately depict those photos that you considered in your work in this case?
Yes.
Your Honor, we would, at this point, as a demonstrative evidence, ask to publish VV.
Renew prior objections.
No, Your Honor. Yes, I do, Your Honor. I'll prior objection, sorry.
All right. It's the same ruling sustained, but, I mean, overruled.
Yes, Your Honor. Okay, let's go to the next screen, please. Mr. Knox, if you... Your Honor, may I ask Mr. Knox to step down, please?
Okay.
Mr. Knox, I'll give this to you if at any point in time you want to point something out or it's available to you. What is this particular photo in your PowerPoint? And I believe it looks like it's, there's a little number 3 down here. I'm not sure if that stands for it or not. But what is that photo that we're seeing?
So this is an overall photograph just showing the outside of the movie theater, just for reference purposes, that this is where we are at this particular scene.
Okay, next, Matt. And is this showing the Theater 10 lone survivor area of the entrance of the theater?
Yes, so you can see there are multiple theaters with different signs. Number 10 is right here, kind of in the middle of the photograph.
Next one, Matt. And this photo right here, did you take this photo, or was this a photo that was provided to you?
I believe this is one that I took.
Okay, and so let's talk a little bit about you going to the Cobb Theater. On how many occasions did you go to the Cobb Theater?
Twice.
Okay, and let's talk about the first instance that you went to the Cobb Theater. What was your purpose in going to the Cobb Theater during the first instance?
So the first time that I went to the Cobb Theater was to see it, to get photographs and measurements and things like that, as well as I had the management show me the different lighting levels and stuff so that I could become familiar with those things.
Okay, and so this is a photo that you took there?
Yes.
I think you took something like, I think it was over 200 photos. I'm not going to go through all of them, don't worry about it. We're only going to go through a few. What is this particular photo showing?
So you can see this is sort of a wide angle showing most of the theater with the house lights on, and then this yellow circled area here is just showing the area where the actual shooting took place.
Next one, Matt. Okay, what is this particular photo showing?
So this one, and you can see that there are annotations showing the actual seats where Mr. Oulson and Mr. Reeves had been sitting.
Now, as part of your investigation in this case, did you get a large volume of documents that our office provided you, police reports, for example?
Yes,
Depositions, for example?
yes,
Lab reports, for example?
yes,
Forensics, for example?
yes.
Okay, so you had a large volume of information that was being provided to you even before you went to the Cobb Theater.
That's right.
And did you analyze all of those documents in an effort to be able to do what you were asked to do in this particular case?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead, ma'am. And so this is a picture that you did not take, obviously.
Right.
Tell me how you used this particular photo and why this particular photo was of interest to you.
Well, this shows the area. This is one of the actual ones taken by the forensic investigators with physical evidence still in place. And this particular photo is a good view looking down because you can see the two rows of seats and see where the things are on the floor and around the area.
Okay, next. So, in your measurement process, let's go back to that last one so that he can talk a little bit. In your measurement process, what is it that you wanted to do? Show the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what was important to you to document, to measure for your assistance in this case.
Well, the main thing is just to have measurements of the different dimensions of the seat. So things like the seat bottom, where is it when it's pushed down and somebody's sitting in it, how high is it, what's the width between the arms, and what's the distance between this seat and the seat in front of it, those sorts of things.
Okay, Matt, next one. And so you go about doing that, is that correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, and as you're taking these measurements, how are you memorializing it?
So you can see here that what I'm actually using is a tape measure that has large numbers on it, show up in the photograph. And so these measurements are all photographed, and then what I've done is added annotation so that you can see what that actual measurement is.
Before you use those measurements, do you take any precautions to make sure that the tools that you're using are forensically correct?
Yes, yes. So this particular tape measure that you see here, this is actually, it's what's called a pocket rod, but it's sold by forensic supply places as well as places that sell surveying equipment, things like that.
Okay, and so tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what measurement you're seeing here at 1 foot 7 inches.
So this would be the measurement just with the seats in place, nobody in them, from the basically the end of the armrest on the back row of seats to the back of the seat in front of it.
Okay, next one, Matt. Okay, this is a little different. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what measures 1 foot 3 inches.
So you can actually see here that this seat back has some recline to it. So when a person's sitting in it, it actually can push the seat back a little bit. So what we did is pushed it back as far as it would go, and then did the measurement again, and it reduces to 1 foot 3 inches.
Okay, and so you're doing the variables for preservation of evidence. Is that what you're doing by pushing that seat back?
Yes.
Okay. At the time of this incident, you don't know if the seat was back or if the seat was not back. Am I correct?
That's correct.
But you're providing those variables for someone like myself to understand.
That's right.
Okay. Next one, man. What's this measurement?
Here, this is a diagonal measurement from the top of the seat in the back row to the top of the seat in front of it. Again, seat just in the static position, not pushed back. So this particular diagonal is...
You want to just have to do it here. It's red. You should be able to...
Yeah. So this particular one, you can see the measurement goes, it's 3 feet 8 inches, so measuring diagonally from here to here. And what that's basically doing is showing you how much distance you have moving from the back of the seat at the top of the seat over to here along that diagonal.
Next one, Matt.
And then this is a similar measurement, except instead of measuring at the top of the seat, measuring to the back of the seat. And you can see it's a little bit shorter distance, but it measures 3 feet, 2.5 inches from here to this top edge of the seat.
Okay, go ahead, Matt. Okay,
And then here measuring from the back of the seat on the seat itself, straight across to the back of the seat in front of it. And of course, I've included a measurement here, so 1 foot 5.5 inches, 5.5 inches from the back of the seat to the front edge of the seat, and then 1 foot 3.5 inches from the edge of this seat to the back of that seat, and then the total distance from here to here being 2 feet 9 inches.
and is this something, this is a procedure that you would do in every crime scene investigation that you would perform, is that correct?
Right, you take measurements of whatever's around there. So sometimes you're working a scene and it's in a bedroom, so you're measuring where all the furniture is and things like that. Here, because it's the movie theater and the seats are what are of interest.
Is this the same process that you teach your students as well,
Yes,
and law enforcement throughout the country?
yes.
Next, Matt.
And this is showing the width of the seat at the top of the seat back. It's 1 foot 8 inches.
Next one, Matt.
And then this is showing the distance between the armrests on the seat, which is 1 foot 10 inches.
Why is that particular measurement of importance, the width of the seat?
To show how much room a person is sitting in the seat has to move around. So how far can you move from one side or the other?
Next one, Matt.
And then here, this is showing a height measurement. So coming up from the floor to the top of the armrest, right here at the front of it, at the cup holder, just slightly over 2 feet, 2 feet and 1/2 inch.
Next one, Matt.
And then this is showing going from the floor to the seat bottom where you would be sitting on it. And you'll notice there's a hand here. Somebody's actually pushing the seat down because, again, just like the seats that recline back, the seat does go up. And so we want to make sure it's pushed down the way it would be loaded if somebody was sitting in it.
Next one, Matt.
Okay, and so this is showing the distance here between this seat bottom and the top of the armrest, which is 8.5 inches.
Okay, Matt.
And then this is just showing some measurements showing the height of the wall here. So this wall, this tape measure behind her is actually on the floor, and you can see that this wall behind that seat is just over 5 feet.
Okay. That's your close-up.
That's the close-up that actually shows you the measurement, 5 feet 2 inches.
Okay, next one, Matt. Okay, let's stop there for a second. You took far more measurements than what we've showed here today, is that correct?
That's true.
Okay. You took measurements throughout that particular theater, is that correct, at the different locations throughout the theater?
I did. I took quite a few different measurements.
Okay. Now, Matt, let's go to the next one. The documentation of items there at the theater at the time of the shooting, is that an important thing to do?
Yes.
Okay. And now that you've taken measurements of certain areas, are you able to certainly understand a bit better where those particular items may have been, as far as distance is concerned?
Yes.
Okay. And so what do we have here in this particular photo?
So this is just showing, again, going back to that overhead looking down on it, this is the evidence the way it was documented by the forensic investigators, but you can see where there's a popcorn bag on the floor here, and of course popcorn, and this is the seat that Mr. Reeves was sitting in, so this would be right, basically between his feet, and then this would be off by his right foot.
Okay. Next one. And that's documenting,
That there's a cell phone right here on the floor.
okay. Same documentation?
Just a different vantage point with the camera, but yes.
Now, what does this photo, what is that depicting?
This is showing the same area, just a different angle, and I point out that the fired cartridge case from the pistol is documented right here.
Now, this photo was taken by their forensics, is that correct?
That's right.
And some of these identification marks are, that one's hard to read, it looks like. Is that depicting the actual seat, number and row?
Yes, that's the way I understand it.
Okay. And so, if I can read it clearly, this would be the seat that Mr. Reeves, according to their depiction, that Mr. Reeves would have been seated. Is that correct?
That's right.
Next, Matt. I think there's a better one. I may be wrong. There was a fired cartridge case that was found in this case.
Yes.
Was that the general location of where it was found?
Yes.
And Matt, could you give us the next one? I believe it's a easier picture to see. Is that a photo depicting the cartridge of the bullet, or spent casing, I should say, not cartridge? Goes to show you how much. Casing of the bullet, that's where it was, right?
That's right.
Okay. Next one, man. Before we get to the next series, did you also see the autopsy photos and the wounds of Mr. Oulson?
Yes.
Okay, and did you also see the wounds of Mrs. Oulson?
Yes.
Okay. I don't think we need to go through those. Let's go through the next series. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about, and I want you to stay standing here before we ask you a series of questions on this. Describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what...
I object.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about backlighting and explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what backlighting is.
So backlighting is basically like the name implies, backlighting being lighted from the back. Excuse me. So, if most of us probably taken a picture of somebody outside with the sun, or a bright sky is behind them, and you take the picture, and then you look at it and you see nice bright sky, and the front of them is dark, and it looks more like a silhouette. So that's an example of backlighting. And so, what we're interested in any kind of crime scene is just what sort of lighting conditions could be there, and what sort of backlighting may be present that could affect how somebody sees something.
And so we're going to go through a set of photos here. You are not telling this jury by any stretch of the imagination that what they're seeing here in this backlighting is what Mr. Reeves actually saw on the day of the incident. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
You're trying to show the actual effect of backlighting in certain positions when someone is in front of that backlight.
That's correct.
Okay.
Counsel, just over to the side.
Okay. Mr. Knox, just hold a second. Court's going to be reading an instruction that's appropriate during this period.
Ladies and gentlemen, this testimony is being offered only to demonstrate the concept of backlighting, and that's what you're to consider it for.
So let's talk a little bit about how you set these photos up in order to show the backlighting effect. This individual that we have here, what is that?
So that is it's a forensic mannequin.
And you used that mannequin and you placed that mannequin where?
So the mannequin is placed on not the back row, the row in front, standing in front of the seats facing back toward the back row.
Okay. And at the time of placing the mannequin there, did you have a camera?
Yes.
Okay. And at the time of placing the mannequin there, was there backlighting, and where was the backlighting coming from?
The backlighting, as you can see, this is actually coming from the movie screen right there.
Okay, and so you placed the mannequin in various positions in order to do what?
To just show the effects of that lighting. So,
Object, Your Honor.
Okay, Dr. Knox, we're going to be going now through a series of photos of the mannequins in different positions. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay, go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, Matt. Go ahead, Matt. That's it. Okay. You can take your seat. Sorry, Your Honor. I made you come all the way over here for just... Dr. Knox, you agree or disagree that I presented you with an issue concerning two items in this case, one being a light that was either reflective or emanating, and there were two items that I wanted you to consider in telling me what that light source was, correct?
That's correct.
Remember that? That was in the video.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes?
Dr. Knox, back to the reflective or illuminating source. And you remember taking Mr. Reeves, one of Mr. Reeves' shoes that we had obtained from court order?
Yes.
And you remember taking an iPhone?
Yes.
iPhone. And you remember going to the theater at, you agree or disagree, what, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning that we went there?
It was about that. That's right.
And did we bring Mr. Koenig and Doug Lacey from Beck Tech with us?
Yes.
And you agree or disagree we did that in order to try to replicate and find out what the source of that illuminating or reflective light was that we see in the video?
That's correct.
And you agree or disagree when we went there, the entire system had been changed?
That was my understanding. That's correct.
And you agree or disagree that we could not perform that analysis because of that reason?
That is correct, yes.
I have no further questions.
Thank you. Cross,
Thank you, Your Honor.
are we using the screen anymore?
I can move it.
That'd be great, thanks.
Can we move that?
Yeah.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
I'm assuming you were billing in this case.
Yes.
Okay, and what's your hourly rate?
For this case, I think it's at $250 an hour.
Okay, and you charge for travel?
I do, yes.
And how much on top of the 250 do you charge for travel?
Well, the travel I charge at half rate, so for actual travel time.
So 250 an hour, and then for each hour that you travel, $125?
That's correct.
All right. And how much have you billed so far in this case?
I really don't know the numbers for that. I mean, I've obviously done a fair bit of work, but I don't know what the numbers are.
Okay. Do you keep records of that, I'd imagine?
I do.
All right. And you've testified, I think you said, in other cases?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would imagine that when you testify in other cases, one of the first questions the opposing counsel asks you is how much you've billed in the case, right?
Sometimes I get asked that.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, wouldn't you say it's a great majority of cases? Because that's something that people normally bring out with the opposing people that are testifying for the other side, right?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no.
Okay. Well, my question to you is, don't you think it's a majority of the time?
I don't know. I mean, I've never really thought about it, but
I mean, for almost every deposition you've taken, people ask you, right?
no, I mean, not always. No, I get quite a few cases that's not really the.
Right. I'm not asking you about all the time. I'm just saying most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I couldn't give you the numbers. I don't know if it's most of the time, half the time, or what.
Okay, we're going to move on. The only reason I'm asking you is I would think that you would anticipate that question would be asked of you today so that you could come to court prepared to answer that question.
Yeah, I don't really look at the money numbers much at all.
And the judge would object because he could have subpoenaed Justice Tecum if he wanted that question asked. He's giving some indication that there's something wrong with it.
I'd object to the speaking
All right,
objection.
Overruled. Move on.
The measurements that you testified to that we saw up on the screen, those are just basically measurements. You're not presenting them to this jury saying that these were where people were at any particular time, correct? They're measurements of the seats.
Right, measurements of the seats just showing the different variances and so forth. Yeah.
Okay, so like what I was saying, it's not supposed to give this jury the impression that's where anyone was in any particular point in time.
That is correct. You're correct.
Let's just talk just a little bit about backlighting. Now, just to make sure this jury understands, because this is important, the presentation that we all just watched, the only purpose of that was just to demonstrate the concept of backlighting.
That is correct. To demonstrate the concept, I'm not trying to demonstrate that that's what anybody saw in that theater that night.
Okay, and the object you chose was mannequins, because I guess it made sense, but in reality you could have chose any object to demonstrate what the backlighting was?
Yes, I mean, I use mannequins because you have at least a human-like figure, because some of the issues with lighting is things like shadow. And so
Right.
obviously the shape of your face may cast shadow differently than another
Right.
object might.
And again, we weren't using those mannequins to say that was Chad's shadow or anything at all like that, right?
That's correct, that's
All right.
correct.
And when you say backlighting, like in the photo that you showed to the jury, there was a white background, correct?
That's right.
All right. And you're not telling this jury that that was the background that was going on at the time of the shooting, right?
That's correct.
All right. So really, that picture doesn't depict what was going on at the time of the shooting, like you already indicated.
Right, right.
And when you talk about backlighting, obviously the nature of that is it's the back, right? Meaning
Right,
you saw
right.
the screen in the background is what I'm getting at.
Right.
Now that doesn't account for the overhead lights that were on, correct?
Well, when those pictures were taken, the lights were set at mid-1, which is the setting that would have been at the time of the actual shooting.
Okay. And there was also the screen though itself would be moving and having a different light form.
Right, right. What was played at that time was just, it was a different trailer. It's not the same trailer, so I don't know that exactly what was on the screen at the moment of the actual shooting.
Okay. And you would agree with me that the camera lens cannot adequately represent what the human eye sees.
Yeah, that's correct, because for one thing, it's a two-dimensional image as opposed to the three-dimensional that you'd see, but you're correct. It is a picture of it, not what your eye actually sees.
Right. If there's no technology out there in reality, there may be in the
That's
future probably, but as of right now, there's no technology that can replicate what the human eye sees.
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct.
So we're just looking at a picture that's demonstrating some light in the background that wasn't the movie at that time, correct?
That's right.
There, moment, John.
You-
Nothing further. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any redirect?
Not necessary.
All right, thank you. May this witness be released or
Yes.
on standby?
Stand by.
All right, Dr. Knox, you're free to go, but if you get called back, you have to come back. I'm sure they'll allow you plenty of advance notice if need be. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.